Reverend Dr. Shanon Sterringer, but I go by Shanon. I'm the pastor here at the community of St. Hildegard. I also have been the director of what's been going on in this space since 2016 when we acquired the property and began to transform it, first into the Hildegarden and now into the Hildegard Haus. Hildegard, St. Hildegard was a 12th century German Benedictine genius. She had a holistic charism. Holistic means she was very interested in mind, body, spirit. Everything has to be growing and healthy, and so we've tried to pull her charism into this space in different ways. We've transformed it. When we get inside, you'll see outside we have a lot of gardens. Hildegard was very into gardening and herbs and plants and foods for being healthy. So we've tried to expand the gardens. We did just receive a nice sizable grant to continue to expand the gardens. So over the next year, we're going to be pulling some of the grass out in the front here and putting more walking gardens in. So you'll see some more activity happening out here. But everything that's done here is done by either grants or donations. So it's really a community-funded space. When you get inside, you're going to notice a lot of art, some of it that might look a little bizarre. Hildegard was a visionary, and so most of the pieces of art that are inside the building are different visions that she had throughout her life. So I do a lot of tours here where people come just because they're interested either in her art or her medicinal, natural medicine or different aspects of Hildegard. We do have an active worship community here. We are a Christian church, and so on the Sundays we have liturgies each Sunday. Joined with Joan and Nicholas Lehman, who are founding church members here and both sit on our board. Joan is the chair of our board and Nicholas is our scribe. And so it's been a process over the last 6 years to get the space where it is now, because the model that we're following is something we're creating, and so there's no we're laying new ground and a new path. We are very active here in Fairport Harbor, but we are also really global. Many of our members live in California, New York, Maine. They live around the United States, but we also have members in the UK, in Germany, and even at times people attend from places like South Africa. So we really are global, very national, but we also have a very strong local in-person community. But I am joined with Barb Carlson, who is the matriarch of this space. Barb and her family built this space, really, so I want to turn it over to Barb to introduce herself.
I used to be a coachman from Fairport. I live around the corner. When the Slovaks came over in the 1800s, they were probably around 1912, there were about 25% of Fairport Slovaks, 25% Hungarians, about 40% Finns. And that was basically the Finns, Hungarians, and Slovaks, your FHS. And about 25, they were going using St. Anthony's Church. We had no church. And one day they went over there to have church on a holy day, and the church was locked. And they were not allowed in. So they had a meeting, decided they need to build a church. They bought this property in 1925 for $600. And 1926, they got a Finnish architect who came in, and they ended up borrowing money to build the church. But all the workers, the Slovaks and Hungarians, used to bring the wood, used to bring everything they needed by horse and buggy over here to build the church. It was all wood. It was not brick at that time. There was no house next door. 1926, they started it and they finished it. And the total cost of it was $60,000. And 1929 and 30, they finished the house. And that was all wood. I'm not sure when they bricked it over, but at one time they had a parish of about 150 families. And of course, when the diamond closed, people started moving out to different locations. We started losing our population, and then the church kind of started going down. We kind of pretty much stopped having services here in 2012-13. Then it went for sale. 2016, Shanon and her husband bought the property and changed. But at one time it was a very bustling community. You had 7 churches in Fairport and probably 14 bars. But the wives would be at church, the husbands would be at the bar, and everybody always said, go to Fairport if you want to drink, go to Fairport if you want to worship. And that's what they did. But that's where the church got started.
Maybe some of the kids don't know what a parish is. Can you explain what is a parish?
Yeah, so a parish is a church community. So here in Fairport Harbor, you have St. Anthony's. All of its members that belong there would be considered the parish of St. Anthony's. So we have a parish here of the community of St. Hildegard. St. Michael's had a parish. So it's basically another way to say it is the members or the community members. Just a little fun fact to add to that. So as Barb said, St. Michael's closed in 2012. I think officially, you might have had a few more services, but I think officially it closed in 2012. The church itself was empty then. In 2014, so I personally worked at the parish of St. Anthony of Padua for 22 years, so as the pastoral associate and the director of religious education. So at that time, at St. Anthony's, and I don't know if you'll be interviewing St. Anthony's or not, but there was a incident when the pipes broke under the church floor in 2014. So when that happened, the floors were ruined. So all the pews, like where you would go into the pew, had like dips. We had like, the yellow danger tape put up on this thing. And so, we were told that they had to take all the pews out and they had to tear the whole floor out. And it would be a major project. And so we were trying to figure out where the community would worship during that 4-month period. And St. Michael's was empty. So St. Anthony's actually rented St. Michael's for 4 months in 2014 while that work was being done. So, as myself personally became familiar with the space and the building, and and then after the work was done at St. Anthony's and we all returned to St. Anthony's, I think the building here of St. Michael's sat empty maybe for another year before it was put up formally for sale. And at the time I was doing my PhD work in the writings and works of St. Hildegard, and that's where the whole idea of purchasing the property and renovating it in the charism of St. Hildegard came from. But it was just a funny connection that St. Anthony's actually rented this space. I am an ordained minister, and as you may or may not know, the Roman Catholic Church does not recognize women's ordination, so that caused me to have to resign from my position at St. Anthony's. So I moved my ministry 2 blocks down the street and continue to minister here in the village and to many of the same members, but just in a different space. So, still love very much the community at St. Anthony's. Just had to shift gears a little bit. So.
One of the things about St. Michael's is there used to be a Mass in Hungarian, there used to be a Mass in Slovak. We didn't have English back when I was small. And they would have one of the original founders of the church would come on Saturdays and teach us kids the Slovak-Hungarian languages so that we would understand the liturgy as we were hearing it. But they changed to English probably in about the early 50s and started adding a English service. So,
Barb, do you still remember anything that you used to say when you were a kid? Any of the...
what's the yes? Come and eat.
Okay.
Most important.
Yeah, and double nuts. Good night. I remember the prayers, the songs from church, and all that. I can sing those in Slovak and Hungarian, the Christmas carols. I cannot talk any of the language.
But the songs stayed with you.
The songs stay with me. I can still sing the songs. Yes.
That's nice.
So when we get inside, you'll notice that when we purchased the building, though, because as Barb said, the numbers had been slowly declining over the years, and a lot of work needed to be done in terms of painting and refinishing the floors. We did renovate the space, and it took a little bit of time. But the windows that we'll get in and see shortly, they're not original to 1925 or 26, but I think they were probably put in the 70s. We'll look at those because they're gorgeous sure you're going to want some photos of the windows. But so we've done a lot of renovations, but we've also tried to preserve what we were able to preserve, so that it's very important to us here at the Hildegard Haus, or the community of St. Hildegard, to not forget our roots. And so we try to bring Barb where we can, or the St. Michael's community in where we can, just to remind not only ourselves but our wider community that we didn't fall out of the sky in 2016, but we're building on something that's been here for a long time. And after another 100 years from now, there'll be something else, I hope, here building on what we've all laid that foundation for. So.
And I don't know if any of you live in Fairport, but if you do, you'll probably hear the bells on Sunday morning. They're the original bell that was put in for St. Michael's.
Yeah, the bell is in this tower here. We can ring it, actually. If you want to hear it, we can ring it now if Nicholas wants to. Nicholas is our official bell ringer. So, we call him Quasimodo sometimes, but yeah, you can hear the bell. But it is the bell is in that tower. That tower is empty, but the air conditioning unit's in the middle. But they're traditionals, dusty, dirty old bell towers, but they're clean. There's no bats in them. We've checked that out. The first time I went up there, we have a beehive in the backyard. First time I went up there, I put my whole bee suit on just to make sure in case there was a bat, so that it wouldn't get caught in my hair. But yeah, Nicholas can ring the bell. But
and the other thing Shanon found out when they took over, when the church was built, it was wood.
We call him Quasimodo sometimes, but yeah, you can hear the bell. But it is the bell is in that tower. That tower is empty, but the air conditioning unit's in the middle. But they're traditionals, dusty, dirty old bell towers, but they're clean. There's no bats in them. We've checked that out. The first time I went up there, we have a beehive in the backyard. First time I went up there, I put my whole bee suit on just to make sure in case there was a bat, so that it wouldn't get caught in my hair. But yeah, Nicholas can ring the bell. But
and the other thing Shanon found out when they took over, when the church was built, it was wood, and they left a space in between so they could brick it eventually. Well,
so it's got a rope. It's a bell.
So the bees built a hive inside the church brick wall there, and we always knew there were bees in the basement, but we thought they were coming in from cracks in the window and there. Well, they found out that hive was in their wall. I don't know how big it was, but it was extensive and had been there for years.
Yeah, we had to have a professional beekeeper remove it from the building, and then now we have a hive installed in an actual beehive. Thank you, Nicholas. in the backyard. Do you have questions before we start moving into the different spaces? So, when we purchased the building, or the whole property. So my family at this time lives still in the house, which used to be the former rectory. This half of the property is the community of St. Hildegard. The actual community of St. Hildegard at this point owns the church building. I serve as the pastor, but they've purchased the church building. My husband and I still own the house. Maybe our vision long term is eventually it'll all end up as in the ownership of the community of St. Hildegard. But for now, they're really two separate properties legally. But our reason for doing that is while my husband and I in 2016 acquired the property, renovated, and started this project, we really wanted to last long beyond any of the time we're here. And the only way for that to happen is if the community itself owns it. So otherwise it goes away when we go away. And so we're doing it in baby steps or in pieces. So right now, from that big honeysuckle over is owned by the community of St. Hildegard, and then the other side is owned by the Sterringer still. But we can walk around the grounds. We have a lot of gardens. We are starting to put signage out. We've got a grant for that over time as we continue to build the gardens. So if somebody wants to come and walk the gardens, they know what they're looking at, and it makes a connection to where Hildegard actually wrote about it. We did receive, there's a beautiful statue in the center of the yard of a shepherdess. That was a gift to us from somebody here in Fairport who lives on Eagle Street. But we're really promoting female religious leadership here, and so the shepherdess is a powerful image of that female religious leaders. So that's our Rosa statue. Her name is Rosa because that was the name the previous owner gave her, and we wanted to honor that. Otherwise, we would have probably named her Hildegard. So I always say her middle name is Hildegard. But that was a gift, and pretty much everything you're going to see in the building, as I said, was gifted by somebody in the community. Our parish or our membership here at the Community of St. Hildegard, like I said, is really national. The director of our finance council lives in Minnesota. The director of our liturgy lives in Maine, Maryland part of the year. So we have people all over the country really that are connected here in Fairport Harbor, which I think in and of itself is pretty cool. And many of them travel to visit. So even though they might live in California or New York or somewhere else, many of them have made trips here just to see the space and visit.
What is this sign here? What is this for?
So this is a peace pole. You might notice these exist not only, that we not only have one, St. Anthony's has one, the Fairport Congregational Church has one, other private homes have one. So a couple of years ago, Pastor Tina Green at the Fairport Congregational Church started this, it's like a peace pole walk, hoping that, many of the churches, businesses, private residents in Fairport would erect peace poles so that it sends a message that Fairport Harbor is about peace, but it also, people can walk the village and maybe stop and either say a prayer or meditate for a moment on peace. Most of the peace poles have the May Peace Prevail on Earth in a number of different languages. So for us here, we have German because Hildegard Bingen is in Germany, so we have kind of a German flavor here. But also Spanish. What else do we have here? English and what do we have? Arabic. So those were the 4 languages we chose. I think down at St. Anthony's there's Spanish, English, Hungarian, and Latin. I think the Congregational Church has 8 languages on theirs. I think they've done we can add if we wanted to add 4 more. But it's a peace pole. So this is a couple things that we have going on over here. I'll mention first the cornerstones. So this is the St. Michael's cornerstone. It says on the side here it was built in 1926. You're welcome to come around and take a photo of that if you want. In 2016, we opened up a retreat center here, the Hildegarden. This was before I was ordained, and that's this stone. And then last year, we celebrated our 2-year anniversary as an actual church, and so this cornerstone was installed. But this one here is the original. The date of it's on the corner here. So it shows the progression, 1926, 2016, and then 2019. So actually, tomorrow is our 3-year anniversary of a church community, which will have a big celebration all weekend. But those are the cornerstones. One of the things that we're promoting here is sustainability, because Hildegard was also very interested in the environment. And so we have our rain barrel, but my husband just hooked up something he created. I cannot tell you how it works because it's his creation, but we have a double rain barrel because this building doesn't have a water spigot outside, so for years we were having to get it from the house and bring it over, which was kind of a nightmare. But also, as I said, we're trying to be more sustainable. So we go through this barrel with all these flowers pretty quickly, and so he hooked up a double system so that we have plenty of water to keep the flowers up here watered. Especially as we develop, so all of this area, like where the Nicholas is at, this is all going to be walking gardens, hopefully in the next couple of years. So we wanted to make sure we have plenty of rainwater to do that. So this is our rain barrel system. Over here, as I mentioned, this is Rosa. She's one of our prized possessions, so you might want to come over and get a look at her. You just don't see very many shepherdesses. You see a lot of shepherds in different churches and places with the male figures, but you don't see many females. So Rosa was in a private collection in somebody's home over on Eagle Street. They purchased her in 1994 in New Mexico, had her shipped here. They said the box that she came in was as much a piece of art as the piece itself. And then in 2018, they gifted her here to us, and then my husband and a couple other guys built the base for her. But like I said, the gardens will be coming like right here. This is the house, so we won't, I know that's not really probably of interest, we won't go over there, but we can go in the back and see the back gardens, and then we can come out and go inside the church if that's good for you. Okay. So when we purchased the property, this was all full of weeds. So as Barb said, there hadn't been a whole lot of parishioners here or members here for a while. And so we didn't even know the patio was here. Somebody was doing yard work and said, hey, there's a patio underneath here, and so we cleaned that up. The tree that you're looking at here, it's a magnolia. It's the most beautiful in the spring, the most beautiful tree ever, except it leaves about a foot of magnolia petals on the ground. It'd have to be cleaned up. But maybe Barb will share when we get inside. But Barb's family planted this tree many years ago for a wedding. And so it's a wedding tree, and it's been here ever since. It's also very much important part of this space. The back is, as I said, we're putting signage as we're putting more herbs, and we have a lot of herbs gardens out here. In the summertime, when it's nice, sometimes we have services out here, so we put chairs and we use this little metal altar out here. But so when it's nice, we do try to get outside if we can. These are all figs. So I don't know if you've ever, there aren't any of them ripe, or I'd invite you to sample them, but these are all fig trees. So over 50 years ago, Barb's cousin planted this. It was their 25th wedding anniversary. So Barb looks very forward to seeing it in bloom every spring. These are all, my husband does a lot of the handiwork around here. He built all of these raised beds, but you can just come on back and see here we've got all kinds of herbs growing in here with signage. We've got lavender and sage and rosemary. We've got fennel, which is, I don't know if anybody has ever had fennel seeds. But these are all fennel seeds. They are edible. But you can keep coming on back if you want. These are the gardens. Okay, and then we do have a beehive back here. If you want to, we won't go too close to it. And if you have allergies, don't even come on this half. But if not, they're not going to bother you. But I just want to make sure everybody's safe. But we do have a beehive back here. You can come as close or not as you choose. But we're not messing with the hive, so nobody should get stung. But you can see we do have a hive back in here. I have it closed up so that kids don't wander in from next door. And this is all part of the church property. So as I said, the community of St. Hildegard has purchased this half. So this all belongs to the community. So this is the back of the sanctuary. When we get inside, you'll see the window from the front. It's very beautiful, but I'll just point out you can get a back shot of it here. That window, what's in front of it has gone through many transformations since 1925 to today, so I'll explain what's there. I will tell you a funny story about the ramp. When St. Anthony's rented the building in 2014, my husband and a couple of guys put a ramp like this up because there were several parishioners at St. Anthony's who couldn't do the steps. When we were done renting it after 4 months, somebody needed it and purchased it, and we took it down. And then when we purchased the building, he had to put another one up. So he said, I can't believe I built this same ramp on this building twice. So, but we did build that. This was just laid. Part of this came from a grant. Nicholas was one of the workers on this, but we're again trying to make the property as we're growing as accessible for people to walk around and not get muddy and things like that. So we just put this beehive walkway in. Just come this way. So my husband is a metal worker, so he made these gates for us. He hand bent the letters on it, but this is so when we have music or something, people can load their equipment up here.
I'm impressed.
You're impressed? Oh, thank you.
This is before wood brick. This is all wood that they put in. And the original windows.
Let's get to the sanctuary. So here in the sanctuary space, we're gonna, on the back wall here, this is one of St. Hildegard's visions. So for Hildegard, she believed, and even contemporary science is telling us this, that we came from light. So, in scientific language, our cells contain the same DNA as stardust, really. So for Hildegard, but she was looking at it more from a religious perspective, we come from the light. We live in this world that's marked by darkness and suffering and pain and evil and all those things. And so that's where you get the dark stars. But the goal is to get back to the light. And so in this vision, you can see even with the dark stars, there's this glimmer of gold in the center. So, even when we're facing things in our lives that seem very dark, there's still hope and there's still an opportunity to pull out of it. So this is one of her important visions. So this is why we put it on the back wall. And you can see the crosses over top of the window because we are a Christian church. But over the years, I wanted to point that out because you're going to see in this book, the sanctuary went through many different transformations. So I'll let Barb explain them.
When we originally had the church, we had the pillars and the dome, and this was all painted, hand-painted icons from a gentleman from Czechoslovakia. He lived at our house for 2 years while he painted the ceiling with all the icons. Icons are not statues, they're pictures that depict a scene.
And we have we'll look at them. There's one up here of an icon, not to interrupt you, Barb, but there's an icon here, and we have a whole loft full of them.
Yeah, and so that's what the whole ceiling was until they painted over it. But then in the 60s, they changed the altar, they took out the altar and made it more normal than it is before.
And you can see here, in this one here, I don't know if the camera wants to close up or not, but you can see it was very plain white, and then it had just a crucifix in front of it, a couple of curtains. Yeah. And then it was transformed into with all the icons. These are icons.
And then we got in 80s and 90s, we put in the icon screen that separates the altar area from the congregation area. And all of our altars face east. It's the eastern rite. They all face east because your light comes from the east and it sets in the west.
Okay. So when it closed, they took all of the icons and the sacred objects out of the church before they would put, any church would do that before it was put up for sale. So when we purchased it, it was empty. It needed, like I said, needed to be painted, and the floors needed to be done, and that kind of stuff. But we first opened the Hildegard Retreat Center. The back wall had just a flower, like a big flower on it. Some of you may have been in here for different reasons. And the window was the center of the flower as it bloomed. And, our focus was simply finding ways, whether through arts or meditation or, healthy eating or whatever, different ways to grow our light, to help us grow, into healthier, happier people in a community. When we decided to open up the church, we wanted to put one of Hildegard's visions actually on that back wall. So we took the flower down, and then we created the fallen stars, is what she calls that. So I want to say there's been at least 5 different focuses on that back wall, but this is what we would call the sanctuary. So it is really the most sacred part of the building. You're welcome to go up in there. It is open to to anybody wants to go in there, but you can see that it is a focus point for us here. Around the walls, we have all of these pictures you see, as I mentioned outside, are all different images that St. Hildegard had in her writings, and so we try to have those available for people. Many people do come here from, especially on driving tours, from like Pennsylvania, Indiana, other places that just are very interested in Hildegard and her works, and they just want to, they may not be interested in the worship community, but they want to see the shrine. So this is essentially a shrine in that sense. But that's the space. Up in the loft, that used to be the choir loft, where for the Byzantine or Eastern Rite Greek liturgies, the cantors would be up there. Now we use it as a prayer space. We did receive a very generous donation of icons, so all of the icons that are in this building were not from St. Michael's. St. Michael's removed them all when they moved out. But we had a donor who gave us all of the icons that are in this space, so there are icons upstairs. There are some you see them on the gates there on the other side. And then we have one very special one up here in the sanctuary, a big one, that's of Hildegard herself. So that somebody commissioned that for this space. So icons, as Barb said, are more part of the Eastern Rite, but we definitely have them here in the building. Downstairs we have a library. So the library was donated to us, most of it, by Dagmar Celeste. She's a Reverend Dagmar Celeste. She was the former First Lady of Ohio. Her husband Richard Celeste was the governor here, and also an ambassador, I believe, for India for a while. But when Dagmar sold her family home on Kelly's Island, she donated her library to us. So we do have Dagmar's theological library downstairs. And then also there's a kitchen and some tables where sometimes we have little lunches or things like that after events. So it's not a huge space, but it definitely is big enough for us.
When we were little, I thought it was humongous. But the one thing about St. Michael's, the Eastern Rite, you never have singing or music in the church per se, no instruments. Everything is chanted. Your priest chants to the congregation and cantor chant back. So you don't ever hear musical instruments or music in the church, just the singing of the songs through chanting.
Well, we do have instruments. We have guitars and piano. So there is a piano behind this presider's bench. So actually this weekend for all our anniversary festivities, we will have a choir here playing the piano. But yes, but we do use instruments here. It's really been a blessing to us because when we have had big events, we have issues here with numbers in terms of getting people in the building, but also parking. And so that's always a stressor for us. So being now primarily online in many ways has alleviated some of those stressors because we're gathering in a new way. And so the building is still very much central to our existence, but people are attending in a different format. So it's, it helps us with not having to get too stressed about parking and getting everybody inside here safely. So especially in the winter, we have big steps and even that ramp that's super icy. I use a lot of salt because I'm always afraid of that. Windows were put in probably in the 70s. They're cut glass, as you can see. They're so we've got the one up here that when the sun comes in the morning, it's just stunning. You can see, you'd have to come up this way and look this way. St. Michael is on the front of the building, and so he's got big, beautiful wings that fill up when the sun is on that side of the building, like 3, 4 o'clock. And so the artists who put these windows in knew what they were doing, artists. But these windows here are the sacraments. So in the Eastern Rite, baptism, and there are 6 sacraments because baptism and confirmation are celebrated together, but they're the sacraments of the church. So if you come out of a Catholic, even a Catholic tradition, you would recognize them. But they are, sacraments are different moments that people go through, like baptism, marriage, first communion, confession, things like that. So those are the sacraments are in the windows. And then there are just some very beautiful stained glass ones that are like little swirlies in the other spots. We do still have the original windows. The big ones are in the garage. The small ones, I do own the Green Shepherdess Fair Trade Store and Art Studio on 3rd Street. If you ever come in there on the studio side, we have the small ones on display just because we wanted to pull them out. And I can't tell you how many people come in here and ask, were those the windows from St. Michael's? So they are a conversation starter. So.
Well, sit back there so that they can sleep during the sermon.
Yeah, so and actually I'm glad you mentioned the pews because those 2 pews are original pews. So when we bought the building, the Byzantine diocese asked us if we wanted the pews, and we said no, because we do move things around. Sometimes I bring my favorite spot for the altar to be as a presider is down here, because then we put the chairs in a circle and we're all kind of on the same level. When we have big events, it has to be up there because we need to put more seating in. But when there's 25, 30 people in here, I prefer to bring it down by down here. So we wanted to be able to move things around. But we wanted to keep 2 for nostalgic purposes. I know Barb likes to come and sit in the pew. But also they're handy back there. But the rest of them were sold to Zappatelli's, is it Red Creek?
Red Creek.
Out on Bacon Road. And so they've cut them up. They're actually really nice. If you go in there and you see their booths, they're the pews from St. Michael's. So just that's a little fun fact. Most of the pews are out of St. Michael's. And we did have the floors all needed to be stripped and redone, and the ceilings, plaster over years. What happens when moisture gets in, the plaster was coming down and stuff. So we did have to have all of that professionally renovated. But it's a beautiful, beautiful little building, and I kind of feel like it's a little gem here in Fairport Harbor that not a lot of people even know is here. Church and pray. We do make it available to that. People can call me and say, can I just come sit in the church and I'll open up this back door for them. Because that's, for a lot of reasons, unfortunately things get stolen and stuff like that. Most churches are locked up during the days now and people don't have access the way they used to. But because I'm on the property and we have security cameras, we're able to do that. So people do come sometimes and just want a little bit of a monastic. When the lights are off, let me turn them off for a second. It's just so beautiful the way the sun comes in. So So, you know, it's just really peaceful, especially when it's real bright and sunny. People sometimes just like to come in and be in prayer. And so we do make it available to the community like a little monastery in the center of town.
Hello, so we are here with 3 members of St. Hildegard's Church. Would you ladies like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Barbara Carlson, an original founder member of St. Michael's Church.
I am Reverend Shanon Sterringer. I am the pastor and the founder here at the Hildegard Haus, which is also the community of St. Hildegard.
I'm the chairperson, Joan Lehman, of the community of St. Hildegard, founding member.
So how long have you ladies been working with the church, would you say?
Well, so the church as it is now has really only existed since 2019, although the foundation for it was laid in 2016 when we opened the Hildegard Retreat Center, and then the Hildegard closed in 2018 and for a short period, and we reopened in 2019 as the Hildegard Haus. So for Joan and myself, we've been involved since 2016. But Barb, who is one of the, I call her the matriarch of this space, has been involved much longer, so I'll turn it over to you, Barb.
My family were part of the founding members that built the church. And of course, I was born in 1943, so I was part of St. Michael's until it closed in 2012, basically.
What was one of the reasons you decided to make the church how it is now?
So I was a pastoral minister and a religious education director down the street at St. Anthony's Catholic Church for 22 years, and I had, over that time, had been engaged in quite a bit of studies. I earned 2 master's degrees and 2 doctorates during that period, and my area of study has always been women's leadership in the church, and then also Hildegard of Bingen and leadership. And in 2016, when we purchased this building, I had a vision of bringing Hildegard's charism, her leadership charism, to the wider community through a retreat center. I was still working down the street at St. Anthony's, and so that was kind of what inspired the purchase of the building. Really, the Hildegard, or the retreat center that opened in 2016, was the practical application of my PhD work. And then as time went on, I continued to struggle with my call to ordained ministry, which I had for many years. And when I made the decision to follow that call, it created a situation where I could no longer work at St. Anthony's because the Roman Catholic Church does not recognize women's ordination. And so I had to resign from that position. And so I took a sabbatical. We reorganized the space here, and then I was ordained in Austria. I actually went to Austria for my ordination in 2019. I was ordained in Linz, right on the banks of the Danube River. And then I came back and we opened up the community of St. Hildegard in the Hildegard Haus on September 15th. Tomorrow is our anniversary. 2019. And again, it's still flowing out of the same vision of bringing women's leadership, ecclesial or religious leadership to the space, but also bringing Hildegard's holistic charism to the wider community. And this is the way, this space is given a place to be able to do that. And also, it was such a beautiful property. Really wanted to do something with it that preserved the sanctity of it. You know, there's a long history of religious worship in the space, and also at the same time giving it something new, doing something new with it. And Joan and Nicholas have been a part of all of this. Well, even before 2016, they were at St. Anthony's, and we've been kind of on this journey together for a long time.
When did the gardens start become everything they were?
So the gardens, we've always had some garden. That's been a focus of ours. Like the quince bushes that are out front were installed when we opened the space, because St. Hildegard has a very large collection of writings, and 2 of her writings were on herbs and nature and different ways to use the natural world for healing and wellness. And quince is an important part of her, same with fennel, which we have in the backyard. Those are 2 plants that are very important to Hildegard. So from the very beginning in 2016, we started to plant items that we knew came out of Hildegard's charism. Over the last couple of years, we've expanded them. We've built the raised beds in the backyard, put down some new walkways. But then just this year, we received from the Federation of Christian Ministries, we received a $2,000 grant to expand them because, the space here really serves as a shrine to St. Hildegard, not only preserving her art, which we have along the walls here, and she was a musician, so we have a number of opportunities throughout the year where we have singers that sing Hildegard's music. But we also wanted to develop that part of her charism, which is with the walking herb garden, so that people could come visit the space, they could spend time outside, and then come and spend time inside. So with this grant that we received, we plan on expanding them even further in the front yard. So it's a work in progress, but really the seeds, pun intended, the seeds were planted for it when we first opened the space, but we've just been building on it and building on it. And when we saw the grant opportunity come up, we had a number of different ways we could go for applying different things. Technology was one area we looked at because we're largely a Zoom community, and so we're always needing to improve our technology. But we chose to apply for a grant for the gardens because we thought that would be something that would be easily accessible to the wider community, and so that's how that started. But it's been all along the way.
Are the gardens normally always open? Because I know you talked to us about how like people could talk to you about keeping the church open, but are the gardens always open?
Gardens are always open. We do live next door, but we don't mind. We're used to people, seeing people wandering around the property because when we purchased this property, my husband and I, we ended up selling our family home, which we expected to be in until we retired. And so when we moved here, we kind of moved here with an awareness that even though that's our home, it's a public space. And so, it's taken us a little bit of time to get used to living in a public space. So we are comfortable with people wandering around the property. So yes, the gardens are always open. That's one of the reasons we want to expand the front garden, because we want to put a bench and something out front where someone could you could sit. There's a swing in the back, and there are chairs out here on the patio, but where you could sit out front, really in the gardens, a little bit more comfortably. So yeah, the gardens are always open. The church can be open at any time. We don't always leave it unlocked, but we will unlock it if we know somebody wants to come in.
Now, with all the art inside the church and the art outside in the gardens, do you think you have a favorite piece?
This is one of my favorite pieces, and it's really one of my favorite pieces because as a pastor, we're constantly faced with this. On one hand, faith and belief in goodness and light and love and all these wonderful things we talk about, but we know we live in a world that's just marked by so much suffering and death and violence and war. And so I love this piece because it's always a reminder that no matter how dark things feel, the light's always flickering, and the light is still with us. There's always hope. And so I love this piece. But next to this piece, my next favorite piece would probably be the Choir of Angels, which we can't see from right here, but it's above the gate over there. And it's just this very beautiful mandala. A mandala is just like this perfect circle. I don't know if you're familiar with a mandala. They come in all different styles. But it's just all the different kind of heavenly realm. So I love those two pieces. I don't know if you have a different favorite piece, but this piece and the Choir of Angels are my favorite piece.
What about you two? Do you have any favorite pieces?
St. Michael the Archangel. He's the patron of the original church in the back and here, so those would probably be my favorite.
And that icon there, Barb brought over to us, I was just like the night or two before we opened the Hildegard in 2016. And so when we redid this space and we put the tabernacle in, the tabernacle is handmade. The two artists that made that with the wood and the metal modeled it after the gospel passage. Jesus said, "I am the vine, you are the branches." And for Hildegard, she had this concept, it's out on the gate outside, you might have seen it, called viriditas. So viriditas is a Latin word that means greening power. And so for her, this greenness, sometimes it's in nature, it could be spiritual, it could be emotional, but this greeningness is, what keeps us healthy. And so that image of the vine and the branches ties in very nicely with her concept of viriditas. So we did that, but as we did redesign this, I told the folks that were working on it, I want to make sure that St. Michael Hildegard, or icon stays in that space, because as Barb said, this was originally Michael's house. Now it's Hildegard's house, but it was Michael's house. They still reside here together, but also because it connects us to our past, to our roots, which Barb is very much a part of.
It's so hard to pick one thing for me. There's just so much here to love. Did you talk about the orbs, or shouldn't I talk about those?
You can. So, do you know what orbs are? So orbs, go ahead, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, I'll have to be more specific.
So, just like energy. So this space is very energetically charged. And so when we first, when we first got in here, and we still have this phenomenon, so often people, when they take photos or, different things, they'll get anomalies in their photos or orbs. It's always very positive. It's always very light-based. And it was kind of, when we first opened, of course, we were surprised by it, and everybody was wanting to take photos and experience it. And now we've kind of gotten used to it. We're just used to them being here. And so what it affirms for me, and I probably for you as well, is that this is a sacred space. And I think as we've watched it go through transformations from, its original intent, and then what it became, and then how it transformed into what it is now, I believe as a Christian, I believe that it's just an affirmation that, and that's why I like the choirs of angels so much, is that that whole angelic realm is walking with us and guiding us. And I think when we have those experiences of like an orb in our photos or things like that, it's just an affirmation that we're not here alone, and we're doing good work, and keep doing it even if we can't see where it's going or the outcome. Creating something like this is risky, because you don't know if it's going to be successful. You don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know what the long-term consequences of it are going to be, good or bad. And so it's a risk. And so the presence of the orbs or the energy in this space just affirms for me that just have faith and keep building, keep sowing good seeds, sowing seeds of light and love, and then let the heavenly realm take care of the rest.
And it's amazing, too, about how we needed some people to help us with different things like finance. And all of a sudden, someone shows up who's excellent in finance, and she's really fantastic. And then we needed some more in liturgy, and someone else showed up, very knowledgeable. And it's like, gee, somebody's there pushing things along and helping us to grow.
Absolutely.
So you think when people take pictures with the orbs, do you think that's the saints just kind of giving their, I guess, good tidings and saying that everything is going to be okay?
Absolutely. Sometimes, it's hard to, there are times where it's just, obviously something with the lighting or something, malfunction. But other times, it's very clear there's a presence and an energy. And that's how I always interpret that this is a thin space, if you will, between heaven and earth. And I think even in the Greek Catholic tradition, even with the way that the cantors function, there was always a sense it's a thin space. The icons are kind of that portal between the two worlds. And so, I take it as very affirming. When we first realized that there was, a presence in that sense here, I received a lot of calls for people who wanted to do like ghost hunting things and paranormal, and we said no to all of it, because we don't want it to turn into that. We really want to respect the sanctity of it. And so I always tell people, you're welcome to come in here and just sit in the space. And so many people will say that even when they're in here, they can feel a positive energy that they can't explain. And so we want to keep it at that, rather than turning it into this ghost hunter kind of a phenomenon.
Yeah, for sure. I know, when I walked in, it kind of almost felt like all this stress kind of just lifts off, and it was really strange, because I haven't felt that walking into a place in a while, and it was a very
peaceful.
Very peaceful, yes.
And
very
so many people say that, and that's what I think the orb, when we do catch a glimpse of the orbs, that's what I think we're feeling, is that energy, and sometimes that energy is so strong it manifests itself in our photos or in a, thank you for sharing that, because that's something that people do say.
Huge, it's insane how large that positive energy just kind of shows up,
Right. And I like to refer to that as a thin space, this thin space. And I think that's why when, even when St. Michael's closed, it was really closed for 4 years before we bought it. It was not very expensive, so I was surprised an investor didn't purchase it just and sit on it. You know, as Barb said, there were a number of reasons, there was a restaurant that really wanted it, but they weren't able to get a liquor license because of the school next door. So there were all these things that were in place that kept it available. And so that when we, you know, it was really like, well, the experience you just shared, the moment, and I had been in the space, I had, you know, been here before many times, but the moment I woke up, it was the morning I got up and had this overwhelming feeling that we need to put a bid on St. Michael's. I couldn't explain it, just like you said, it was just this feeling, and it was like, my husband's like, how are we gonna pay for it? I'm like, I don't know anything. I just have this feeling we need to put a bid on it. It was almost as if something bigger than me was saying, do this. And then it unfolded so quickly and so positively. That's when I just really resigned myself to the fact that something's happening here that's bigger than all of us. So we participate in it. And we, you know, my role as a pastor and as founders and as a matriarch is just to help facilitate that, but it's really bigger than all of us.
And I just prayed that it wouldn't become an abandoned building, that somebody would love it the way we had always loved it. We found the perfect couple.
One of the things that strikes me that we struggle with is how do we appeal our faith to the youth today? What is it that you and your family and your friends look to? We want to have our faith continue, but we want to, you know, as Barb said, she didn't want this all to go, you know, to nothing. As we die, we turn things over to the youth. The next generation has their opportunity to refine it, to make it relevant to their lives. So, I mean, Barb and her family have had baptisms, weddings, funerals in this space, and that becomes part of their family tradition. I had an aunt that was a nun in England, and she said, we're a very wise woman, but she said, one of the things that if you take away from life, if you have the 3 F's, she said 3 F's, if you have your faith, if you have your family, and if you have your friends, you have a very full life. You have a lot to be thankful for. So always cherish those things, faith, family, and friends. So we struggle because we realize we're only here for a certain while, and you know, we're gray-haired, and our time is rather short, and Reverend Shanon has more time, hopefully. But how do we pass it along? How do we make it relevant to the next generation? Because it's much different growing up today than it ever was for us. We have social media, phones, different ways to communicate, a lot of different pressures that you're faced with. Your time is so fast and moving so quickly. So I don't know how you feel, or
I think
how you look at faith. Or
what you just expressed, just coming in and feeling it. I mean, maybe it's not something any of us are going to do. You know, it's something bigger than us, and you got to. It's going to speak to your own heart.
Yeah, because I've said, like, I was telling Lexi, actually, I was like, this has been one of the first times I've walked into a place of worship and I haven't felt, I guess, intimidated is the word I use, because sometimes there's so much, but here it's very peaceful. Things are very almost quiet in a sense that things are going to be okay, and I think that's what really struck me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because like I said, that's what we've all felt, and you know, the orbs or the energy that Joan expressed, you know, the only reason we even began to notice that was because people were feeling it. You know, people were feeling like, it feels like there's a presence of some sort here. And so in my mind, it couldn't have become a restaurant, or probably couldn't have been torn down, because when that energy is there and says, no, there's another plan, you know, it just needs the people to help facilitate it. But it is a very sacred space for sure. And that energy, like I said, it didn't start in 2016. It started in 1926, and probably before that. It's the love that the community puts into it. Even in this space, when I look around, everything in here came from somebody in the community, or it's handmade, or, you know, our altar was handmade. The wood that's on the top of the altar was made by somebody who a tree fell in his yard. and he had the wood planked and then made the top, and then my husband made the legs. So even our altar was handmade, many hours of love and care by members of the community. One who doesn't even worship here, he worships at St. Anthony's, but he said, I wanted, and also he helped to make the tabernacle. He said, I believe this is a space I want to share my gifts and talents with, even though he's not a formal member here. So it's just that energy, I think what you feel too, is just the love of the community and the hope of the community.
And the people that originally started the church, when they came here, they had their services at a bar because there was no space available. One of their members.
God is everywhere, Barb.
Had a bar. And so they would go to the bar and have their service once a week. So obviously there was no peaceful. So their vision became something. And it has stayed something always. It's that way today, was that way then. So.
Absolutely.
We live in an interesting area with what Barb said about Fairport Harbor being just FHS. You know, it's an amalgamation of different ethnicities that you have within this 3 square mile piece of property that was probably a result of the diamond property. People needed jobs and they were immigrating. So America is a melting pot of immigration. Different countries at different times have come and contributed. And as she wears her Hungarian Culture Club, they preserve that heritage from generation to generation. So it's, you know, as you see at the high school, FHS, the skippers, you're connected to Lake Erie and the traditions that have brought the commerce to this area, and it's just a reflection of the community. So we hope to always be a mirror back to the next generation to help.
And we've brought a little bit of Germany to that with the Hildegard Haus, because Hildegard was German. I've been to Germany 4 times, twice by myself and twice for other reasons. But some of the art and like the crystals in the cabinet, as I said, Hildegard wrote on using the natural world, came from Germany. So I brought them back on different travels. So some of the items in here are actually from Bingen. But what we've tried to do is bring so this is the only shrine to St. Hildegard in the U.S. There's a big, beautiful one in Germany, in Bingen. And in my travels there, especially when I was completing my doctoral work, I tried to bring some of that back with me so that we can create a bit of that here too. So then it not only connects us to the Finnish and the Hungarian and the Slovak traditions, but now we're bringing a little bit of Germany here as well. So, and the Rhine Valley.
Well, thank you very much. It's been very, very nice experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been nice to have you.
Thank you for inviting us to Spike. And
It'll be a great addition to Fairport for all the archiving that you people are doing with the church, the metro parks, the schools, everything.
Right.
Because somewhere down the line, someone wants to look back on that.
Right.
And you'll have it archived. So that's a good thing.
And one last thing, we're going to send you all with a feather, a magnet of our window, but a feather, because the St. Hildegard had a famous line that she was just a feather on the breath of God, blowing wherever the Spirit moved her. And so we'll send you all with feathers. I think regardless of what one's faith, tradition, or not might be, I think when we surrender ourselves to just letting God, the Spirit, the universe, however anybody wants to describe it, guide us, amazing and beautiful things happen. So we're going to send you all with a feather as a reminder for that. You probably have one in the bag, but if not,
I don't
make
think
sure you
there
get
is one in the bag.
All right, well, I'm going to make sure you get a feather.
I'll make sure.
But thank you so much.